Hi, I'm Rex Black, President of RBCS. Welcome to the RBCS YouTube channel. Hey, I hope you enjoy all these free resources that are available here. And do us one favor. We need to keep the lights on and we need your help to do that. So, when you need testing and quality related services, training, consulting, expert services, you name it, let us be one of the bidders on that next job. We don't expect to get all of your business, but we'd like to get a chance. Thanks and enjoy the shows.
That's gonna change the value that testing adds. And in the V model type of world or waterfall model type of world, which really isn't V model, it's just the way the waterfall typically worked. There tended to be this accumulation of defects over a long period of time, and then an attempt to scrub those defects out via levels of testing like unit test, integration test, system test, and so forth. Which is kind of a weakness. Now it's true that the V model, properly applied, would actually not have that behavior, because you'd be instituting defect removal activities throughout the life cycle, and the final stages of testing really would be about confidence building almost entirely. But in Agile, I think what we're starting to see is companies that are doing Agile right are actually getting very high levels of upfront defect removal in unit testing, and then the later testing does become more a matter of acceptance. Now, it takes a while to get to that level of maturity, and it certainly doesn't happen easily, but certainly we are starting to see that with clients that have done a good job of integrating testing into their Agile life cycles throughout the entire sprint. And then it is more of a confidence building activity, more of an insurance activity, and we'll have to, as this continues, and Agile does start to show more benefits, and maybe if people got serious about doing the V model again and actually did it properly, that you would see a shift into more of a confidence building role for testing, and that would then change the paradigm here. It would not be exactly the same as what I've shown. Let's see, got a question from Roy. Do you know the exact name or location in your web of the file shown? I just discussed that, but let me just go back here and just put that slide up again just for a moment. So you go to the basic library. That's on the resources page. You go to the home page at rbcs-us.com. Go to the resources page and then basic library, and you should find this file, testing ROI, what IT managers should know. If you don't, if you can't find it, certainly do let me know, and we will we'll get that up there. Roy says thanks, and you're quite welcome, Roy. Now I got a question here from Mark. Mark, good to hear from you again. Would you really bring in automation before reviews and walkthroughs? Well, should you or do you typically? I think that's the interesting distinction here. Certainly, it's been pretty well established over years and years that reviews have one of the highest returns on investment of any sort of quality assurance activity, because the cost of detecting a defect and removing it is so low during a review. And notice that reviews happen in an Agile world too. That is, they happen in real time, because the whole team is there going through. They should be going through things like user stories and acceptance criteria and those sort of things. So these are really well-established, proven techniques. And yeah, obviously it should be something that happens right away. I think the reality is that software test professionals are no different than other software engineering professionals, that we tend to really like to geek out. And it's just, there's just nothing particularly geeky about sitting around in a room with people discussing defects in documents. And there is something really geeky about building flashy automated test systems and creating a whole bunch of automated tests for it. So I think as a practical matter, yeah, I think what really does happen is that people do tend to start with automation. And of course, yeah, that's completely backwards. I mean, what you should be doing if you're trying to do business value driven testing, and I suggest we all should, is look at what the return on investment is for given process improvements that we could make, and make those process improvements in that order. But I don't think that we are particularly good at that, partly because we don't often understand the business value. But so certainly, yeah, I mean, anytime you're looking at process improvements, that you should think about relative business value. We do this when we do assessments for clients, so we give them a prioritized list of recommendations, and that prioritized list of recommendations is pretty much always driven by where we think they're going to get the most business value from. And business value, notice, can be money saved, but it'll also be in terms of risk mitigation, so you do have to look at that as well. Question here from Jerry Everett. My buddy Jerry, right up the street. How are you holding on up there, Jerry? I guess you haven't blown away up in Canyon Lake yet. We're just about blowing away down here in Bull Verde. Jerry asks, please briefly describe the parameters considered and their respective importance when classifying a bug as must-fix versus non-must-fix. Oh, boy, that is a great question. What we did on the case study project that I think was about as close to best practices as I've ever seen practiced was we had a cross-functional team that would look at the relative costs, risks, opportunities and benefits associated with fixing a bug versus not fixing a bug. And that spanned all four or five groups that were represented in there, tech support, test, development, project management, and the sales and marketing guys and the executives, all looking at these things, because that really is, you want to say, okay, well, what do we get out of this? What's the benefit? Does it create some additional possible opportunities that might arise versus, okay, what's it going to cost, effort-wise, potentially other resource-wise, and what are the risks? I mean, maybe this is code we don't want to be playing with at this point in the project that might actually be more dangerous to get in there than to leave it alone. So I mean, I think that's really the right way to think about it. Cross-functional triage team, this looking, not just simplistically at the cost and the benefits, but also including risks and opportunities in there, in that consideration. I mean, I think all too often what actually happens is the decision is made based purely on the development resource that's going to be required. And, project manager says to developer, how long do you think it'll take you to fix that bug? Developer says, you can fix that in an hour. Okay, go ahead and do it. And meanwhile, the test manager is going, oh my God, you do that. That invalidates, 20 person hours of testing have to be rerun and aren't automated. Maybe the configuration management team looks at that and says, are you kidding? Are you going to touch that module? Do you know how module's connected to everything else in the entire universe? What's going to happen when you do that? So I think we often are not anywhere near as comprehensive in our perspective on this question as we really ought to be. So I am glad you brought that up, Jerry. And to tie that back to business value, as I was saying before, when we don't fix bugs that we ought to fix, then what happens is we're basically we're going to incur a cost of external failure, because when you got a must-fix bug that comes up in the field, that it must be fixed, right? I mean, that doesn't change the must-fixness of it. I mean, if it's a bug that would have to be fixed, if a customer were to be confronted by it, then we need to find it and remove it prior. And conversely, if we fix bugs that we really shouldn't, I mean, pretty much all projects are resource constrained, time and people and infrastructure and so forth. So basically, every bug we fix is another bug that we don't. So, and this hence the phrase bug triage, right? Of deciding that these limited resources that we have, how are we going to expend them? And even if we were to get to the point where we run out of must-fix bugs, as other kinds of changes, features and so forth, that might actually be much better use of someone's time. Now that, of course, you have to keep in mind the concept of technical debt, the idea that we're going to defer stuff that, is not a raging business priority right now. Well, eventually the overall bugginess of your code will become its own priority on its own right. But we would hope that you descend into that sort of pathological state. Obviously, the less bugs, the better. Okay, let's see. We got a couple more questions here. Came in via email. Well, we dealt with the Agile one, and question via email. This is a really interesting technique. Where can I learn more about it? As I said, there's that article on the basic library where you can go through the case study. It's going to show you exactly how to do it. There are other articles that are out on the basic library and the advanced library that have to do with return on investment. I think there's a hypothetical budget out there that includes a return on investment in a spreadsheet. So if you just kind of poke around and look at ROI, look for the phrase ROI or return on investment, and then look for spreadsheets, then that'll be easy enough to find. And then if you want a more in-depth discussion of this too, you can get my book, Critical Testing Processes. Then that'll give you a pretty detailed discussion of that. I had another couple more questions pop up here on the contact or the question frame. Roy says, I got it, but there was an Excel file. I see a PDF. Is there an Excel file there around? No, it's just in the PDF. The Excel file is really straightforward. I think there probably is a spreadsheet out there under estimation that will have that calculation in it, but the calculations are explained in the PDF file, and it's like I said, it's really straightforward. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and that's it. So easy enough to find. If people are still confused, if there's enough popular demand, I can post that testing ROI calculator somewhere on the probably the digital library or advanced library or something like that. So but it is really simple. Trust me. Once you read that article, you'll go, oh yeah, okay, that's obvious. I just got past a note here. Sorry for an interruption. Let's see. So Mark says, you do mention the cost of automation tools. Would you apply the same logic to lifecycle management tools? Yeah, sure. I mean, the concept of amortization of the tools is something that would apply pretty universally. So, now the amortization period that I showed there, the 3 months, or excuse me, 3 years amortization period, you need to talk to people in your organization about what the proper period is for that. Really, I was just using a hypothetical. Amortization is potentially a complicated concept, but you do, if you're going to make a big investment, then it's going to skew your return on investment numbers pretty badly if you don't properly amortize that. Your return on your testing investment might actually look negative for the year in which you made the big automation investment, because it takes you a while to recapture that value. Now, in the hypothetical case study, you would have gotten that all back pretty much right away, because we're looking at like a $500,000 return, and only $150,000 cost. But certainly, there's plenty of cases where organizations make big tool and automation investments of various kinds, not just test tools, but others. And if you don't properly amortize that, then yeah, that can create some issues. Okay, let's see. We've got some calls for posting the calculator. If you want the calculator, you want that spreadsheet posted, do me a favor. Send an email to info@rbcs-us.com, and that'll go not just to me, but also more importantly to the folks that do the web, and I'll then forward on to them the spreadsheet, and they'll post it up there. So I'd say the odds are pretty good it'll get posted. I'm guessing I'm going to receive a half a dozen emails here at this point. So go ahead and send the email to, as I said, info@rbcs-us.com, and then odds are pretty good that we'll get that posted in the next day or so. But in the meantime, if you just download the article and take a look at it, I can pretty much promise you that the math is so self-explanatory that you probably won't even bother to download the spreadsheet once I post it up there, because you'll be like, oh yeah, I already did it. We got another question via email here as the winds continue to pick up and office threatens to lift off for Kansas at any moment. Those of you who've seen The Wizard of Oz. Question. Some people have said that we shouldn't measure the value of testing. Why? Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask them why they would say that. I mean, I've heard one or two people say that. Most people, I think, have said exactly the opposite, that it's important that we connect testing to business value. I gave a keynote speech at the STANS conference in Sydney and also in Wellington, in Australia and New Zealand, respectively. And one of the points that I made in one of my talks that I gave there prior to the keynote speech was, we've got to connect to business value. That's one of the main challenges of test management now. And each time, I mean, I probably had 100 and some people in the room, and nobody challenged me on that. Everybody agreed, yep, we do need to do a better job of this. Now, there have been one or two dissenters, and notable among them is Boris Beiser. I'll take on Boris Beiser's argument, because Boris is someone who I respect very much, which not necessarily apply to some of the other people that have opinions I've heard, criticizing measuring the value of testing. The Beiser's objection, to the extent that I understand it, seems to be that a tester is unlikely to do measuring the value of testing in a credible way. But I really think that can be overcome. You just have to make sure that you use conservative numbers and that you justify the argument you're making and the metrics that you've got. We've done this for many clients around the world as part of our assessments, looked at this metric, and we get questions about it, but it's never been a credibility issue. It's always been, help us understand better how that's calculated, and there's some tweaking of the numbers and so forth. But that credibility issue that Beiser was talking about when he criticized measuring the value of testing, that was a while ago, and that is something that can be overcome. So I wouldn't not do it based on that. Okay, a couple more questions popping up. Here we go. Comment from my pal John Steinmetz. John says, I live in Kansas, so let me assure you that if you land here later today, it's not so bad. I got to believe it'd be a lot less windy than it is here, and probably a lot less wet. So certainly nothing against Kansas, John, and right now I think I'd probably be less likely to get blown away and land on top of one of the Wicked Witches than if I were in Kansas and than being here. This is quite a storm. This reminds me of the time I was in Taipei, and I arrived there right before Typhoon Herb did. It's pretty wet and windy there too. I got a question here from Mark Bester, do you think that testing should be elevated to a strategic level based on the maturity of the SDLC within a company? Oh, yes, indeed. Wouldn't that be nice? Testing as a strategic concept. And why not? I mean, really, why not? You know, because this is what we need to do. You start talking about connecting to business value and demonstrating your business value. You now have changed the conversation to one that is actually of a strategic level, right? Because we're talking about managing the costs associated with quality, which certainly should be something that manage. You know, we manage costs, right? I mean, it's a strategic thing to minimize costs. You know, it's as I've said before, some of you probably heard me say it, and most companies manage their holiday parties more quantitatively than they manage the quality of their software. It's amazing, but you know, and that's a startling statement, but I stand by it because most of the time when I go in and do assessments for clients and we start looking at things like cost of quality, it's never been done before. No one has ever looked at it before. You ask questions like, what does it cost you to find and fix a bug prior to release versus after release? No one knows the answers to those questions. And those are strategic questions because if you want to quantitatively manage quality, you've got to be able to address those questions. And, you know, as test professionals, when we can start communicating on a level like that, we start communicating with people in a strategic fashion, guess what? We get taken seriously. We get to have strategic conversations. You know, as long as we're perceived as geeky bug hunters, and that's all we're doing is just running around finding a bunch of bugs and getting all geeked out about the bugs and the way that we find them and so forth, it will be perceived by senior managers and executives as purely tactical people playing a very limited role. But when we start to transform that into helping quantitatively manage the quality of the systems that are being produced and the costs associated with it, that becomes a whole different conversation. And notice that our day-to-day work doesn't change. The day-to-day work stays exactly the same. It's just that the thing that changes is the conversation that we're having about the work. And that's what I'm trying to suggest with this webinar, that you know, let's change the conversation that we have about the work to include this question of the strategic value of testing and managing quality. Mark's got a follow-up here. Do you think we should become less flexible in the methodologies we use, become dynamic in the approaches to testing in general? No, I would actually say we need to be more. We need more flexibility, if anything. I mean, we need to understand the different testing strategies, but I think as testing profession, we've run a real risk of becoming really sclerotic on approaches. You know, people running around flogging this concept of the 4 schools of software testing and so forth, as if testing strategies were a religion and you had to pick one and stick with it. And that's just really fundamentally misguided. I mean, you know, those testing strategies are just that. They're strategies, and they need to be selected based on fitness for purpose. You know, I mean, there's a time and a place for heavily reactive approaches using a lot of exploratory testing or Whitaker's attack techniques, combinations thereof, and there's a time and a place for requirements-based testing, and there's a time and a place for risk-based testing and for model-based testing and for all of these other kinds of testing techniques. And people need to get better about picking and choosing strategies that, you know, suit the conditions. You know, as hackneyed as this is, and coming from a consultant, one of the things that can be useful in thinking about this is read The Art of War, because in The Art of War, there is a discussion about different strategies for battles and waging war, and how to select one or another in different circumstances. And you know, you realize that if you start to think about that, it's like, okay, I've got resources and I'm going to attack a testing problem basically, and I've got a number of strategies at my disposal to do that. Which ones are most fit for purpose? And again, that's just, you know, getting to strategic thinking. So, you know, get that mindset. You know, get that be flexible, attack the problem a lot of different ways, understand your objectives, understand how the strategies serve the objectives, and I think we have a long way to go there. Deborah asks, will this webinar be presented again for future presentation? I have several individuals in mind who could benefit from it. Well, there will be, God willing, and telephone power lines don't blow down. There will be another presentation of this at 8:30 p.m. Central Time tonight. If you want to let people know that, you can still sign up via the homepage, the RBCS website, rbcs-us.com. So, you can do that. Now, that might be a little too fast, but you could send that link out to people. Now, this very session is being recorded, and again, assuming that we don't have a massive power failure here sometime in the next few minutes, we'll have a recorded version of this webinar, and it will be posted on the digital library of the RBCS website. So you go to the resources digital library page, and recorded webinars are there. This webinar and all previous webinars are also posted there. So the webinar should be available sometime in the next couple days out there, and you can forward that link. Farah asks a question here of how do we get on your distribution list to receive future training webinars? Real easy. You go to the RBCS webpage again, rbcs-us.com, and I believe it's down the lower right-hand side of the webpage. There's a link that you can click on to sign up for the newsletter, and just sign up for the newsletter, and then you'll get invitations to the webinars as well as the monthly, bi-monthly, every other month newsletter, and the bi-monthly offers letter. So that's easy enough. And just if you think there are other people who can benefit, again, forward on the link and say, hey, sign up for this webinar. If you want to get an example of what the bi-monthly newsletter looks like, there are newsletters posted out there. I forget exactly where you can find them, on an articles page or the basic